Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Spartan Nation Radio. It's now time for the state of Michigan State football, and for that conversation, we bring in Spartan Nation senior writer Johnny Shope. Now, for those of you that are new and the way our ratings are going, we are really growing. Many of you are new. John is a senior writer for Spartan Nation. We love the guy, and he's with us. Now, during the year, we'd go through the state of Michigan State football, and he also gives us our weekly pick six, the 6 games that he finds to be the most interesting in college football. Doesn't have to be the biggest ones. Sometimes the biggest ones are not that interesting. And John brings them to us for our weekly pick six. Let's bring him in. John, how are you, friend?
I am fantastic. And yes, this week we have the 6 most interesting games of the week. It's honestly kind of a light week as far as power moving in the sport. But I think the pick six this week is pretty good, pound for pound. They're the 6 most interesting games of the week, and this is a weekly matchup that carries over if we tie.
Now,
so you either win the week or lose the week, and luckily the good guys won last week.
All right, John, you did win last week. I think you got all 3 of the games we disagreed on, right? So
I caught fire.
Yep. So for the year, I'm up +3. It's like golf skins game. If we tie, then the next week is worth double. All right, John.
Yep.
So have your way. What are the games, brother?
Here we go. Because, comeback starts one word at a time. So last week was like word 1 for me. There are interesting ones this which one I find to be remarkably disappointing because Georgia and Florida are supposedly each other's biggest rivalry. Find me one other rivalry in all major sports that's played on a neutral site each year. What a joke. It is the largest cocktail party in the world, though. University of Georgia, University of Florida, not a ton left for either to play necessarily this year. Who is man? Who is mouse? Who is real? Who is false? Georgia, Florida.
John, I really like Dan Mullen, and I think he's going to do good at Florida, but just too many weapons at Georgia. I'm going to have to go with Georgia.
Because Kirby Smart is there, I'm going to agree with you this time. I think Kirby Smart gets this game. I think he has a way to elevate it for a Georgia team that's looking at the calendar and not going to experience the same kind of November necessarily they did before. I like Georgia, but I'm hoping for an upset. I'm hoping for an upset here and hoping that Florida wins. Now, if you want to talk about upsets, there is a potential upset in the Big Ten Conference this week. This is one of the most interesting games. It looks sleepy on paper because it's Big Ten West that aren't competitive, really, for this division. I'm talking Nebraska at Purdue. And the reason I put this on here is pretty simple. I'm not sure the Nebraska head coach has said the right things so far relative to Nebraska's state, their power in college football. And I think he needs to reset and understand where Nebraska is in 2019. But if Scott Frost is going to have anywhere near the level of success that Nebraska wants him to have, well, frankly, if he's going to even have the success that Bo Pelini had, he needs to go on the road and beat Purdue. Nebraska at Purdue. I do like the Huskers in this one, but I like it close.
Yeah, John, I was going to pick Purdue until I saw some of their injuries. I'm going to stick with Nebraska.
The most injured team relative to the depth that they have this year in the league has been Purdue. I hope this is a good one, but it's one that Nebraska's got to get if they're going to get where they want to get. Now let's talk about one that I just simply love. That is an academy game. I'm talking Army at Air Force. Last I heard, Hondo, Don Brown said Army wouldn't lose another football game this year. They've lost 4 in a row. Does Army have anything going to Colorado Springs at Air Force?
Oh, John, you're trying to kill me here, aren't you? Admit it. You're trying to get me.
Options.
I love the academies, and you know that. I do. I love the academy. But, man, Army, my heart says Army, John. I'll go with Army.
Hey, Don Brown said so. So I'm going to tell you, even though it hurt me earlier this year and I'm still stung, I'm going to go Air Force because Army should not be a team that loses 4 in a row. And that's what makes me think it's their turn to win. But I'm going to go Air Force and give them one last chance this year. Let's talk about some other teams.
So you're taking Air Force?
I am going to take Air Force. I'm taking the altitude difference and maybe some weather. Let's talk about a couple teams that have historically done me wrong. And I'm going to throw out a game that has a little story behind it. BYU is always in this pick six.
No, wait a minute, John. Wait a minute. I have to say this. The moment you said BYU, my son Duff said to me the other day, he goes, Dad, is Mr. Shope a Mormon? I go, I don't think so. Why? And he goes, because he always has them. Okay, go ahead.
They play people. That's why. They're on our list so often because they're in the most interesting games a lot. This is one where they're going to Utah State, and it actually matters more than it looks on paper. BYU, there's some rumblings that Kalani Sitake may be in some trouble here if he can't beat anybody in the state of Utah, and that they may want to make another run at Ken Montalono, the famous Navy head coach, or somebody else. Of course, we're talking about the quarterback, Mr. Love, for Utah State. This game is at Utah State. Gary Anderson's the coach. It's not that it's a must-win, but there's potential trouble in the water if BYU cannot go and beat Utah State at Utah State.
I think Utah State's going to roll them by double digits.
Really? If that happens, look out.
Now,
watch out.
I'm going to tell you why, John. I've watched BYU a couple times this year, and I am not impressed in the least bit with how they handle the pass, and we know that is Utah State's game. I just think this is a bad matchup for BYU.
I think it's danger zone because even though one program may be look, they're two kind of equal programs right now, but historically BYU is still the big dog in that state. Because of that, I think Utah State gets up for it. I'm going to go Utah State, but I'm going to expect this to be one of the most interesting games of the week. Another one is one that gets my heart broken on both sides of the equation. Talking Utah at Washington. Utah's a 7-1 football team contending. Washington fell on their face too many times this year. Broken hearts late in the middle of the night with me watching extremely late at Oregon. Anything left in the tank for the Huskies and their so-called great coach, who I'm not sure is really that great anymore.
Listen, I love Washington, and Washington's at home, but I think Kyle Whittingham is one of the most underrated coaches in America. I'm going to go with Utah.
You know, every time we do Utah, and I'm still feel for them last year because they got hosed out of a Rose Bowl by a no call. When you get in the biggest games, they always seem to be just exposed a little bit for the athletic talent, kind of like the University of Iowa, if you remember when they played Michigan State in the Big Ten title game. I am going to take, for no good reason other than I want to get stomped again, I'm going to take Jacob Eason and the Washington Huskies. They are now a spoiler, and some teams can handle that. A lot of teams can't. That's a team that thought they'd be playing for playoffs position into November. They're not. But at home, I think they get up one more time. And I'm going to bet one more time on Coach Pete. And that leaves us the game of the week. Southern Methodist University at Memphis. Tigers all around. SMU at Memphis.
Listen, I'm a buyer on SMU. I really like what's going on at SMU and everything else. But, and there's a big but here, I have watched Memphis 3 times now. I really like the way Memphis has built across the offensive lines and defensive lines. I'm going to go with Memphis because of their line play. But, man, to me, this is a toss-up either way. If this game was at home for SMU, I would have picked SMU. I am only going with Memphis because they're the home team.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Memphis. I like the line play angle, but I also like the angle that SMU is in a position where their heads are going to get a little big, and that doesn't always travel well. I'm not saying they're going to get whacked and beaten badly right off the bat, but I think they're going to be their own worst enemy this week, and I'm going to go with Memphis as well. But you brought up something about the line, and I'd like to take a look back at last week at one specific program that, to me, looks extraordinarily on the rise that I have been asleep on or doubting, and that is the Oregon Ducks. And the reason that they are so on the rise so fast, and they will continue to do so, is they have an offensive line that is extremely well coached and is continuing to get better. They are going to be back to being Oregon as soon as 2020. Mark that down.
All right, I'll mark it down. All right, John, now I want to turn our attention to the state of Michigan State football. No doubt there's no way to cut the mustard any other way. It's disappointing. I wrote this, and it made a lot of people appreciate my candor. A lot of people mad at me that the way we're watching Mark Dantonio's career come to an end is sad. I want you to reflect first, John, on this game against Penn State. Really reflect on the 3-game window. John, your thoughts on the state of MSU football?
Well, it's still almost a state of shock. I'm trying to figure out what to write for my next Scope of the Spartans article, and I really don't know what to say at this time.
Well, wasn't that supposed to be here pretty soon?
Yeah, you're talking about early next week. I don't know what to say still. It's excruciating. This offense is excruciating. The production is shocking. The first thing that comes to mind is no major college football program is going to allow their head coach to shuffle any underperforming unit coaches around. That's never going to happen again. That's how bad this Michigan State experience has been. This is a team that is horrible in all the major offensive categories. To me, the most important is scoring offense. Right now, they're 110. Total offense, to me, is the second most important. They're 107. Rush offense, 120th. And the numbers for third down conversion and red zone, they don't really even matter when you get to that point. Those numbers are excruciating, and they're not at all consistent with anything that Mark Dantonio tried to sell last winter. As we all said last winter and agreed, there's no doubt that he should have had the call to do whatever he wanted to do. He did it. Now he's got to live with the result. And the result is a very, very sad, what looks like ending that's going to be coming, because I take it from what happened last year that if he is asked to replace a number of coaches and or coordinators on the offense, that he's probably going to step aside rather than do that. And that's just my pure speculation. So what you have is a dramatically underachieving football team relative to the talent that they have on paper. And in reality, you have key players that quit their coaching staff during the season. You have a team that at best was very strong and outstanding in one unit, sufficient in another, and then so poorly deficient in that third unit, the offense, that it really wore the other two out and has pulled them down. And you have a team that is showing no sign of getting any better anytime soon. And this month of October really been a very sobering, difficult wake-up call for a program that once was competing for championships at the top level of the sport, and now has slid back into the middle, if not bottom third, of the Big Ten Conference.
John, as you know, I started reporting months ago that there was much belief inside the university that Mark Dantonio was leaving. What's your thoughts?
My thoughts are that this gets more interesting now, day by day. Mark Dantonio is going to be compelled to testify in a lawsuit that I don't imagine he's got much to worry about. But when you are deposed, you are generally deposed with an extraordinarily wide net, to use a fishing analogy, meaning you can be asked a number of different things that are not terribly pertinent to the case and would never come up if there was a trial. I don't know if that's going to have any effect or impact on his future as Michigan State's football coach, but the signs aren't good. The energy level is low from the coach, a couple strange press conferences earlier in the year, and then when it came time to deliver, what did they deliver? So it's disappointing for sure. Based on his history as a coach, best coach in school history, I would argue, I don't see all of a sudden he's going to say, you know what, this didn't work. I want to do something else. I will scratch my head for years and years until it's explained what in the world happened from the end of 2017 that got us where we are now, because that was a program perched to challenge to be at the top of the sport again, and it has just shot itself in the foot and now cracked the foundation. So I am not sure how much longer at all Mark Dantonio will be head football coach of Michigan State. for mounting reasons, meaning much more reasons, many more reasons than even there were a couple months ago. Now you've got on-field performance in the neighborhood. And that is really hard to imagine. I never would have thought we would have got to this place about 2 years ago when things really started taking off again for Dantonio as the head coach of Michigan State. You know, that kind of capped off with that great Holiday Bowl blowout win. Since then, it's not gone well.
John, one last question for you, then we'll get you out of here. We're talking to Spartan Nation senior writer Johnny Shope. John, I want to ask you, how big is this Illinois game?
Well, it's turned into a measuring stick. Some of us got some things wrong at the start of the year. Me being number one. I thought they were going to be just fine at the point of attack, and I took it for granted that they would be better as an offensive line. If you saw any of the games the last 3 weeks, it's not the case. So now you got an Illinois team that's coming in with a little more heat and fire than we thought. They are a 4-4 football team. They are 2-3 in the conference. They beat Wisconsin. They're on the rise. They have also beaten Purdue pretty handily. And guess what? They're going to beat Rutgers badly this week. This is a game that's at Michigan State. I don't know what the weather will be on November 9th. But if there are less than 30,000 people in the stands at the end of the, let's just say, third quarter, that's a horrific sign for Spartan football. My understanding is the end of the Penn State game was the lowest point in that stadium since Ohio State in 2006. Don't look now. It could get worse before it gets better.
He is Spartan Nation senior writer Johnny Shope. Know him, love him, appreciate him. There's his thoughts on the state of Spartan football. John, again, your next scope of the Spartan article is coming
early next week.
Okay, so make sure you look for it. That's Spartan Nation senior writer, the one, the only, the great John Shope. Thanks, John. Great John Shope. Thanks, John. Great John Shope.